You're listening to the Absolutely Cosmic Podcast.
So, welcome to the Absolutely Cosmic Podcast, the show where we focus on self improvement from the nerdy perspective. I'm your host, Joshua Salgado, and today we have a truly special guest I'd like to introduce, Mr. Steve Emirzian. He's a seasoned performer from Hartford, Connecticut. He has a performing arts and entertainment column called The Center Stage, showcasing emerging talents in the Hartford area, as well as he's scriptwritten for a few projects such as the Hartford sitcom The Big Shot, featuring Bernadette Stanis, as well a World War II science fiction action series called Operation Guardian Angels, which is currently in the process of being pitched to streaming services. And then to top it all off, he's the appointed commissioner of the Hartford Film and Media Commission, dedicated to attracting external film and television productions to the city. So I'm extremely excited to have you on, Steve. It's a true honor to have you on my new podcast project. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce and turn it over to you. Thank you for being on.
Thank you for having me, Joshua. I'm thrilled to be part of your new podcast. I'm sure it's going to be a raving success.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that introduction. I'm one of several film commissioners on the film commission, and
Awesome.
we're thrilled. We were appointed by the mayor's office a few years ago, and several Hollywood films have come in, and most of them didn't do the entire movie here, but they shot some scenes here.
Awesome.
On January 19th, one of the films that was shot entirely here, called The Featherweight, about the boxer Willie Pep, who was a very famous Hartford boxer, is coming into the Bushnell. So we're
Wow.
going to be promoting that and seeing some of the stars there. And some of them include people like Stephen Lang, who you may know from, he was in Terra Nova. He's been in more recently other productions, but one of them is James Matteo, who was in Band of Brothers.
Wow.
And he was the nicest guy on the set. I mean,
That's
I came
cool.
in several times, several different days, and it was never a problem to talk with him or smile or take a picture. And he did it with everybody. Nice guy. And I like those kinds of stories.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. That's awesome when you have these stars and stuff and they're truly humble and they're just like
Right.
they, love people. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. So I guess I'll start it off with, how did you get into the performing arts? What was your, I guess, origin? And
Ooh,
how did you start getting involved?
that's a good question. That's going back a long way. 150 years ago when I was in high school. I was a shy wallflower, until maybe my junior year. And one of my teachers, I took a broadcasting course, a radio broadcasting course,
Okay.
and one of my teachers in the radio broadcasting class said, "You've got a really nice voice. I'd love it if you would do the school announcements." And I was like, "I'm not doing that. No way." And they kept pestering me. I kept saying no. And finally, after about a month, he got me down to the fact that I would do it. And it was I was nervous putting my voice out there for all to
Yeah.
hear. And but people seemed to take to it, and they liked it, and there was not too many criticisms. Bullies can be bullies, but for the
Yeah.
most part, people seemed to like it, and I enjoyed doing it. And after high school, I decided to pursue broadcasting, and I went to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting in Farmington,
Awesome.
and one of the better schools, and got my radio certification. And right after that, I thought, maybe acting might be something that I'd like to pursue. So I remember applying to Juilliard and the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. I got accepted to both.
That's
You had to
awesome.
do auditions, like you remember the movie Flashdance, where you'd have to go before the board and do your thing, and you'd have to do the. She was dancing, but it was more like the monologues that we had to do, and they were stone faced. They wouldn't let you know if you did well or you did badly, and
Wow.
so I walked out of there thinking I did all right, but not knowing anything. And then a few weeks later, I got a call saying I was accepted to both. I went to the academy because it ended up being a little bit less money. But as it turned out, I ended up going to Juilliard. They had some cross training programs, so I would take like acting at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and I would take movement classes at Juilliard. So I got a little bit of the best of both worlds.
It's awesome.
And New York in the 1980s, for a teenager, I was only 19, so it was scary. I didn't have any money. I didn't have anything to fall back on. Kids today, when they go out to college, they have their dad's credit cards, or,
Yeah.
they have some sort of foundation. I had zero. I had a
Wow.
job, but it was like every 2 weeks you'd get paid, and you'd have to wait to get your money every 2 weeks instead of having. I didn't even have a bank account. That was
Yeah. Wow.
those were really lean times, but it was fun times.
Yeah.
And then I went into I decided to take a couple of classes at the for filmmaking at the School of Visual Arts while I was there,
Okay.
and I fell in love with filmmaking as well as acting. And they would let me act in
Awesome.
front of the camera, so it was kind of like, wow, I get the best of both worlds again. And after about 2 years in the city, I couldn't afford to live there anymore. So I came back and did the 4 year degree at Central for theater and
Wow.
communications. I
That's
hope I didn't go
awesome.
on too long
No,
of
no. Keep going.
getting
Keep
to
going.
it.
It's intriguing. So would you say, I guess, like, because you're highly educated in, I guess, performing arts, acting, filmmaking. Would you say nowadays, with all the resources that we have available, would you still think that it's important for people who are interested in getting involved, like continue try to get education, or should they start making short films and putting them on YouTube, or like start getting creative that way?
There,
Or
there,
do you think both?
there's no easy answer to that. I mean, I mean, Quentin Tarantino never took a film class,
Yeah.
and he was just he just very knowledgeable, very
Yeah.
smart guy.
Yeah.
And um, the really greats like Hitchcock and all those guys, they never went to film school because there was no film school.
Yeah.
They were out of the theater. And the
Yeah.
theater, there's a similarity to it,
Mhm.
the transition to theater and film, like John Huston or these guys. But a lot of them were just, theater people that just they had a vision. I try to remember, I think it was Orson Welles who said, a film can never truly be great unless the eye is the lens in the head of a poet. Something
Yeah.
along those lines. I may be paraphrasing, but it really is true. If you have that creativity, I don't necessarily think that you have to go to
Yeah.
film school. Having said that, I think taking a couple of classes at least
Definitely.
gives you the jargon, the grammar to use that people know that you've done this, and it prepares you with again with a little bit of a foundation. And with regard to acting, I would highly recommend acting classes, even if it's just volunteering in summer stock.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be going for 4 years for acting,
Definitely.
but it will prepare you and get you set up. Whether it's theater acting or film acting, it'll get you set up for
Definitely.
the future.
Awesome. That's a really interesting perspective because I have a few friends who, well, one of them he was big in theater, but he never pursued it outside of like high school, and
Right.
he was doing a lot of stuff that was, I guess, a professional level in theater. He really loved theater and musical type stuff, but he never wanted to continue education. So, like recently, he reached out to me, and he was just like, "Oh, it's like I'm struggling. I can't find any like roles or anything really." And I asked him, I said, have you taken any classes recently? Because he's going to school too. I'm like, have you tried getting involved there just to get new perspective and keep learning, you know? So I know you mentioned like the schools that you attended, such as this Connecticut School of Broadcasting and then American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and then Juilliard as well. So that's like, again, phenomenal that you have such a wide range of education in the industry. But what were some of the challenges? I know you mentioned like, being a college student was kind of rough financially.
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking to my kids about this because they're all
Yeah.
doing. My kids are wonderful. I mean, they're just.
Yeah.
I've got three of the greatest. Their grades are terrific, and one of them is studying in the UK, and one of them is
Awesome.
about to become a police officer.
Wow.
And they are just so smart, so much smarter than I was at that age. But they also had a foundation.
Mhm.
They had the three meals that they didn't have to worry about where their next meal was coming from or the roof over their heads. So in a sense that they have it a little bit easier in that sense. And we had no internet in the 80s or anything like that.
Yeah.
And getting back to acting, for example, if you wanted to be an actor, you had to pay hundreds of dollars for professional headshots. You had to be really into this. You couldn't just say, "Gee, I'm thinking about being an actor." You either wanted it or you didn't.
Yeah.
And if you wanted it, you had to pay the hundreds of dollars for a professional photographer, put the 8x10s on the back of a professional resume that better not have
Yeah.
any errors on it. You had to mail it because there was no email back then. You had to put it into an
Yeah.
envelope and go to the post office and pay whatever $1.50 it was to mail it off to. Sometimes it was Boston or New York. Then you'd have to follow it up with a phone call to see if they got it. And they knew that you were serious. So when you finally called these TV series or films, they knew that okay, we'll bring you on board. Now I
Definitely.
think it's a little too easy where everyone can do it, and
Yeah.
just emailing things in is meaningless because you don't know who's getting it.
Yeah.
I like the old fashioned picking up the phone and actually
Yeah,
talking to the
definitely.
casting director, if possible. It wasn't always
Yeah,
possible, but they knew that you were serious and that you weren't
yeah,
just like fly by night. And so I think that's the fact. I think the technology is great that you can do all these things, but it's now flooded
yeah,
with people that want to do it that are not necessarily great or even really interested or I should use the word passionate. I'm
yeah,
passionate about the arts, whether it's
yeah,
filmmaking or
for
writing or
sure.
acting. I can't wait to write sometimes. I can't wait to if somebody says, "Hey, I want you in one of my movies," and I don't have a lot of money, or sometimes I do it for free if it's
Yeah,
close by. I don't
definitely.
mind that, as long as I know they're not using me. They
Yeah,
really just don't have the budget. I don't
yeah,
mind that
definitely.
because I love what I do. And
Yeah,
but there are people who say, "Oh, I wouldn't do it unless they pay me," and I get that. I understand where they're coming from, but what background do you have? I mean, you have to build up a little bit of a reel, as they say,
for sure.
whether it's writing or directing or anything else. And
Yeah,
it's all the passion. If you're passionate,
yeah,
you're going to go far.
for sure.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, some of the like I guess the most notable podcasters that I listen to, I think Alex Hermosa. He's totally different world. He's actually kind of like a business guru,
Hmm.
but he launched several like successful gyms, and he mentioned like the whole ideal of just working for free kind of thing in the beginning, like just to even get the experience, just to get understand the world, because again, like you said, you got to be passionate about a lot of things, anything that you do in life, kind of thing, if you're going to pursue it truly. So that's a great perspective, I guess.
And I see both sides. I mean, you don't want to be
Mhm.
used. You don't want to be doing
Yeah,
everything for free because people will tend to use you. You're worth money certainly, and we all have
yeah,
to pay our bills. But if you have a legitimate friend who says, "Listen, I really could use you one day. If you could
yeah,
come in," not a big deal.
yeah, definitely. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I guess to piggyback off that further, do you like do a lot of small and bigger projects? Just I know you said you're super passionate, so you try to get as involved as possible. Is there kind of like a do you have a I guess a checkbox like, okay, it's this type of project, or I took an acting class, and like typically, they explained, I guess, when you're acting and stuff like that, you have roles that are, I guess, a little bit easier based on your experiences, or where you come from, even how you look and stuff like that. Do you kind of have like roles or things that you kind of tend to gravitate towards just because you enjoy doing?
And that's interesting. I don't tend to gravitate towards anything, but
Okay.
people always cast. I've been cast most often as a police officer, a
Okay.
sheriff. I guess I
Okay.
look like law enforcement for some
Yeah.
reason. I don't think I'd ever have it in me to really be a police officer like my son's doing because he's telling me how hard it is to go through it. I'd be washed out the first week, I think. But I do enjoy playing police officers and
Yeah.
things like that, and
Definitely.
people in charge and detectives and things like that. But I played all different types of roles, comedy roles and things of that nature.
Cool.
And I don't usually say no to something if it's as long as it's within driving range, or well, if they want me
Yeah.
to come out to Wisconsin, they're gonna have to pay for my my ticket. But
Yeah.
my friends usually explain what the role is. It's usually pretty simple. I don't mind that it's not a leading role. If it's not a leading role,
Yeah.
it can be just 2, 3 lines. It could
Yeah.
just be a background extra. That's how I started, as a background extra
Yeah.
on shows like Spencer for Hire in Boston and Law and Order. I did a few of those, and every once in a while I'll see a repeat and I'll say, "Oh, that's me walking past." It's kind of weird, but
It's pretty cool.
it doesn't matter to me what the roles are, as long as I think I can handle it, and I like the challenge of trying something that
Yeah.
may not necessarily work.
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
I don't remember anything that didn't necessarily work. There may have been, I just didn't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Definitely. Because I remember like during the acting class that I took years ago, the instructor, she mentioned a few different type of acting methods, and I think like the most notable ones that everybody kind of knows is either like method or improv.
Sure.
And I can't remember which type she mentioned, but it was essentially, and from my boxing experience also, it resonated very well. But like as you flow and you say the lines back and forth, take and take and take, there's almost like a subconscious emotion that kind of clicks. And I felt that for me personally, as well as I think a little bit of method, kind of just because I remember we did This Is Our Youth, and we did a scene where we were running out of the apartment building after the friend's dad, like it was like a money laundering type thing, and he like had to smack me, and I told my friend, my partner in the class, I was like, smack me, like do it, because I'm not going to be able to pretend. And then later on in like SEER school, survival school, we had some moments where we were kind of um, in a different world, and I can't really mention, I guess, in public, but we were in a different world where we had to survive certain environments and stuff like that. And I got really into it. And there was one point where that's like I felt like I was really there, and I felt like that if there was anything, I guess for me personally. So I guess my question for you is, um, when you figure out that method, are you still trying to utilize different aspects, or is it kind of like if you know it works, you kind of
I think it was Michael Caine who said that acting is reacting.
Mhm.
You don't want to seem like you're waiting to say the lines. You
Yeah,
want to make it conversational.
yeah,
And
definitely.
that to me is the best acting in the world. When somebody goes like this and looks down and then finally answers you, like it's just coming off the top of their head. When you know they've memorized the whole thing.
Yeah,
I think that's and the British do that wonderfully. They're the best actors in the world as far as I'm concerned. Any show I watch from Britain, they're far and away far superior on average to the Americans. And I don't mean that
yeah,
as a diss to Americans, because there's certainly some great American actors, but there's just something about the teachings over there
yeah,
in theater that they are riveting. They have
yeah,
that gravitas, whether it's Patrick Stewart or whether it's Ian McClellan. These
yeah.
guys, if you watch anything like The Crown or Downton Abbey, any
Mhm.
of those actors are just wow,
Yeah,
outstanding. And again, it's they're very good at just being regular people. They're not
yeah,
trying to like outdo each other.
yeah,
Some actors actually say to underplay it. Play it really low, like a Morgan Freeman or
yeah,
just barely acting. And it's like you don't want to seem like you're acting, if
yeah.
that makes any sense at all.
It,
Um,
yeah,
when
definitely,
you're telling me your lines, I'm not waiting till you finish and then just going to burst in. I'm going to be reacting to what you're saying even before you're
definitely,
finished. Like even with
definitely,
my facial movements or my eye movements or what have you.
definitely.
Um, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It makes total sense. Because I know, like, when I was in that class and doing This Is Our Youth, the character, he was like, he was kind of like a rebel, like, he did drugs and stuff like that. And I was like, totally opposite. And I think the instructor did that purposely to get me a little uncomfortable.
Mhm.
But I realized that, like, if I ever, and I think it helped me with personal relationships too, like, to just be able to get comfortable with all different kinds of people is like just find that link of similarity between that person's character, well, that role's character, right? That character, and then
Yes.
myself, and then it helped me kind of get immersed because then almost like I felt like everything kind of synced up in the moment
Mhm.
because I don't know, I felt like I kind of felt the emotion a little bit more, which was quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
an actor, or they say write, you write about what you know. If
yeah,
you're a writer,
definitely.
I'm a director of film sometimes, and I enjoy directing, but I don't do it as often. But I'm an actor's director, so if
Yeah,
I'm dealing with somebody like we were doing a Beatles parody, I remember one time, and some of the people didn't know who the Beatles were, which is fine. So I
yeah,
would say, well, who's your favorite band? And they would tell you at the time. I think what somebody said, White Snake or whatever. I said, well, imagine when you're saying the Beatles that you mean White Snake,
okay,
if that helps you. And that seemed to
interesting.
help them get into the fervor of it. And
Yeah,
sometimes as a director, you can help them along. During my sitcom, when I was directing it, I was wearing many hats, and the main actor didn't necessarily know where I was coming from because the character he was playing was supposed to be in his 50s with three kids and not knowing where his next move was coming from, if he was going to stay at the job. And this was a guy who the actor, not no fault of his own, he was only in his early 30s, didn't have any kids. So
yeah,
we would meet and I would tell him what my story was, and that helped him. Even though he
yeah,
wasn't the right age, it helped him. Oh, I see where you're coming from. Why you think that way at 50 is not the same way you think at 30. You
yeah,
know what I mean? And so
definitely.
that can help too. Sometimes it helps the actor if they themselves can make themselves a backstory.
Yeah,
Well, you're not just playing a soldier in World
yeah,
War II. You're playing a soldier who doesn't believe in killing. Let's say you don't
yeah,
like the idea of killing. You're doing it because you're ordered to, but your faith, your religious faith is you're in you're they're against each other and you're in conflict. So that's an interesting aspect. And then
yeah,
take it one step further. Maybe you had some trouble when you were in your youth, but you didn't like certain people. You were bigoted towards Japanese or whatever, and
yeah, yeah,
whatever it is that gets you. Why are you the way you are? Why are some soldiers gung ho? Why are some soldiers with PTSD? Some
yeah,
people never get it. It doesn't mean one's better than the other. It's all about the individual and what you've gone through. You
definitely.
know,
Yeah.
as just one example.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Hmm.
people are complex. So when you go into the role of playing a person, right, regardless if you're playing, Star Wars Jedi, they're still a person. You know what I mean?
Right.
Regardless if it's like the sci-fi series Guardian Angel, Operation Guardian Angels, just because it's a science fiction or a horror movie or a supernatural or anything or a superhero movie, they're still people. So at the end of the day, like you said,
And you've got to sell it. And that's interesting you bring that up because I remember William Shatner, they give him heck being an overactor, but I like William Shatner. And he was trying to explain that the reason he overacted in those early days on Star Trek was because you were playing against styrofoam rocks and puppets,
yeah,
and the
yeah,
budget just wasn't there. So if you wanted
yeah,
to sell that, it was your gravitas, the drama of it, and the
yeah,
lines.
yeah,
Sometimes it was the music that was coming in that drew you in as an audience, even though you still see the styrofoam rocks or whatever, you can let that go as long as somebody's really trying to convey, I'm scared of this. You know,
for sure.
yeah.
Definitely. That's quite interesting. So I kind of I guess with your 20 years of experience, what are, and I know we're kind of already talking about that, but what are some of the lessons that you've learned along the way, pursuing this career?
Well, there's not a lot of people you can trust. There's a lot of people who will tell you things that never come to fruition, especially if you're trying to raise money for a film, if you're a director or producer. They'll promise you the moon and then very seldom deliver. There's a lot of cutthroats in the business. There's a lot of um, uh, if you get on a movie set, it's almost like a theater, like a play in college, where you become this incredibly incestual family of theater people, and you know everything about each other. But then
Interesting.
as soon as the play is over, you're gone. And you
Yeah.
don't usually hang out anymore unless there's another play the following year or
Yeah.
something that you get into.
Yeah.
Same thing with a film or movies. And it's nobody's fault, I don't think. I think is you get so immersed into what this one project is, then it's over. And I had
Yeah.
people after my sitcom was over calling me up and crying and saying, I'm sorry it's over. And I kind of felt that way too. It's like, wow, it was really hard. It was really difficult to do. Now it's over. Now what do we do? I want to
Yeah.
still put on another play, and I want to, you get like a high. There's a
Yeah.
high you get from from performing or writing or what have you. And so I'm not the only one who felt it. It was other people, and I thought that's interesting.
Wow.
When a play ends, when a movie ends, whatever, um, we need that next, for lack of a better word, fix.
Yeah.
I've
For
never been
sure.
into
Yeah.
that. You just love it so much. You want that next
Yeah.
high. You
That's
know.
that. That's really interesting. That kind of sounds really familiar because when I came back from my deployment about a year ago now. On deployment, I'm a load master, so we're on hardened crews on the C-130 plane. We fly, we 20-hour days, long days. You're sweating, you're grinding essentially.
Oh yeah.
Getting the mission done and stuff like that. And we like grow super close. Same thing, like super close. You have intimate conversations on the plane about just life and things like that, and joking around and whatnot. And then when I came back, like I had extreme difficulty kind of just readjusting to and I explained it, I guess, most certainly. Imagine like Mars had human beings and you go to another country, overseas like that, and it's much the culture, the histories, everything so differently. So you get used to and accustomed to that, and then you come back and you just have an issue readjusting. And it's the same thing. Like for me, I just wanted to kind of go back so badly. So I definitely understand where you're coming from that. And it sounded extremely familiar. I was like, holy hell, like
Well, that's
that's
a great analogy, and I think there's probably, and I don't mean to belittle because the military is certainly hard work compared to what we do
yeah.
in theater, but I think there are similarities to
Hmm.
the grind that you're doing for a
Hmm.
project, whatever the
Yeah,
mission is. It's the
for
same
sure.
thing with the mission of a theater or the mission of a
Yeah,
film. You got the
most definitely.
pre-production, the production, and the
Hmm.
post-production. Right now, when I go to regular jobs, I often use producer lingo. It's like, to me, there's nothing different from this job that has nothing to do with the arts than if I was doing pre-production on a movie. I'd be doing this. This is what I'd be doing, and it's all about keeping your ducks in a row, as do in the military, getting that
Definitely. Yeah.
C-130 ready. Because if it ain't ready, somebody's heads are gonna roll. And
Yeah.
the same thing with
Essentially. Yeah.
you're gonna hear from the producers if you don't have your lines down, if you don't have the things ready to go on that
Yeah.
day.
Definitely.
So there is like there's a certain kind of like mission about it. It's a
Yeah.
very tactical thing, and I have great respect for the military. My uncle was in the Air Force, and I'm a believer in being on time. Being on time is late. Be
Definitely.
early.
Yeah.
I've never
15
been
minutes
late.
early is on time.
I
Yep.
have never been late to a job, as God is my witness. In my
There you go.
adult life, I've always 95% of the time I've been early, and I have no respect or very little respect for people that are
Yeah.
continuously late. Don't be
Yeah.
late. Don't
Yeah.
be late.
Yeah.
Things do happen, yes, of course, but I mean, um, I've just been lucky. I mean, the time will come when I will be late, but it's so far it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
So it's pretty good. But it's all about discipline. Like discipline
Definitely.
being in the military, you have to. My son's telling me about the discipline he's going through right now with his academy. It's like they're
Yeah.
not
I
putting
can
up with anything.
imagine.
If you're going to be on our police force, you better get this done.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
want to hear
True.
excuses, and that's. But I laugh at that because I was that way anyway. Nobody had to tell me to do that. My mother was the one who raised me, but
Yeah.
she was the one who said, "Don't be late. Do your hard work. You don't
Yeah.
have to love your job. You can hate your job, but you took the job, so do the job well."
Yeah.
And that's the
Definitely.
way I was raised.
Yeah.
Um,
I think there's something to be said. Like even it doesn't matter what you do, but taking pride in what you do, coming in early, maybe staying later a little bit, just doing a little bit extra, and trying to keep getting involved above the standard or the I guess the standard of expectation. Trying to do even if it's just a little bit above that, but have pride in yourself that I'm working. I might be a janitor, but I'm going to be the best damn janitor.
and
Kind
I've
of
done
thing.
that. I've
So
been a janitor, and I've been and
yeah,
on my first week, you're the best janitor we've had here. I said, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know the other
yeah,
guys. I'm just you hired me to do a job. That's what I'm doing.
yeah, for
So
sure. So
um,
that's I feel like a lot of people, and I may have fallen in that too at some point. Like they'll hear acting or they'll hear like performing arts or making a movie, and they're like, oh, the extravagant, the fame of it, instead of just understanding like it's going to take a lot of work, it's going to take a lot of research or learning or whatever, and the discipline coming in early, late days. I've heard stories of um, plenty of actors who will come in and like 18-hour days and they're just like line same take too. It's not even like it could be one small scene, one line. They're not even doing much, but either technical difficulty or special effects, whatever it is, right? Or the director's just like we need to get nailed on the head, right? And that long day, got to be focused on that, you know what I mean, rather than just like the fame of it or the glory of things where that may come at some point for anything in life, but
that's a great
yeah,
point you just brought up
yeah, thank
because there's very few. They only want to hear about the red carpets and the fun,
yeah,
and it
yeah,
is fun, and it's sometimes fun doing the actual shoot. But when I was on Law and Order, we'd have to play. There would be people who'd have to be the dead body in the dumpster.
yeah.
And the first thing out of their mouths is like, I want to be that person because you're going to be focused on me. Yeah, but you're there all day and you better not move. But those people are serious.
Yeah.
That's just part of the fun of it. But there are so many, like I said, even today, there are so many people who call themselves actors or want to be actors, and they may even mean well, but they just don't have the tenacity to do. Oh, I have to be up that early to go to the shoot. Oh, I can't get there till like 8. No, it's a 4:30 shoot. So if
Yeah.
you can't get there at 4:30, you're not coming.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's that simple. But
Yeah.
they all like the love of they like they love the romanticism of what showbiz
Yes.
is. There's
Yes.
hard work. If you're a writer, you're going to be a writer's block, and you're going to be up
Mhm.
till 3 in the morning. You're a
Mhm.
director. You got to like the day before. You got to make sure all your ducks are in a row. Same thing with a producer. Same thing as an actor. There's no easy in or out.
Yeah.
There's all the jobs are important.
Yeah.
And if you have
Definitely.
one job and your job is to make the props and get the props to the set, and you don't do it properly, you're not going to work again, or
Yeah.
certainly not a third time. You might
Yeah.
get a second chance, but
Definitely.
um, but
Yeah. I
that's
think.
I
Yeah.
think that's there are a lot of good actors. There's a lot of good things, and especially since I focus on Connecticut. I've never been to L.A.
Yeah.
I lived in New York for 2 years, but I pride myself on the fact that I was able to do a lot of my work right here in Connecticut.
Yeah. It's
Ninety
awesome.
percent of it, and it's like I didn't expect that would happen, but I was lucky, and it can be done. And Connecticut is just as good as Atlanta, Georgia for The Walking Dead. I mean, it
Oh
was
yeah.
the very first show that I worked on, Spencer for Hire, was the very first television series that was shot away from Hollywood. It was only in Boston.
Wow.
That was so unusual in 1985,
Mhm.
whenever it came out. No one could believe it. They thought it was going to fail. But it went on for 3 seasons. But
Yeah.
nowadays, most of these shows can be done in New Mexico or Georgia or Massachusetts or whatever. But that
Yeah.
was unheard of before. But
Yeah.
now there's no reason Connecticut can't be part of that or
Yeah.
Hartford. You know.
That's true. And like one thing about Connecticut, I'm born and raised. It's like we have so many different like subcultures. Like every town is so different. I'm from Bristol. I remember a few years back. I think it was a Hallmark movie. It might have been. I don't know if it was Mario Lopez or
Hmm.
there was someone who's famous who is they were filming on North Main Street, and I was working at the Walgreens down the street that's now closed. But I remember I was like, oh, I hope I can go on break. I'm gonna like try to peek a little bit just to see. But I was like, I always thought like, why would somebody want to come to Connecticut? Being a little trying to be like, why not New York, whatever. And then I looked up the movie and I thought about it. I'm like, well, if they're filming a movie that takes place in Connecticut, why not film it in Connecticut? Why
Right.
not like go to the real place or have actors and actresses and people from that area who
Hmm.
know how like I wouldn't know how to walk down like the streets of Chicago, let's say, or Wisconsin. How I don't know how living like that is, so I feel like it would take more to be able to play a role in that area as a character kind of thing, rather than if I'm from Bristol, Connecticut, and play a movie in Bristol.
I agree. And Connecticut has a great film commission, not just the Hartford Film Commission, but the Connecticut Film Office. And we are so open to anybody who has any questions about permits or anything like that. We
Hmm.
make it so easy. And that's why we've been getting more Hollywood productions coming in. The last one I
Yeah.
just mentioned, Featherweight with Willie Pep, they loved us at the end. They were so thankful that we took them around location scouting. We made things easy for them. And Connecticut has a 30% tax credit. So
Oh
you
wow.
work, and we're even working on. There are some people that I know that are working to get it to like 37%, which is
Yeah.
unheard of.
Yeah.
And you make it high enough in a tax credit, and you'll make everybody come here. We
Yeah.
have the
Definitely.
studios already. We have
Yeah.
the infrastructure is already here for the
Yeah.
most part. We might need a little bit here and there, but it's here and ready to go.
Yeah.
And now I'm talking as a commissioner, but I'm just trying to promote, Connecticut and Hartford, and
Yeah.
people are starting to see Hartford for what it is, which is
Yeah.
a good place to shoot.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess I know you're talking about a little bit about like the role of a commissioner, but I guess what's the day in day out kind of process for you as the commissioner?
It's just it's a volunteer position. It's
Okay.
what we do is whenever, not necessarily a Hollywood production, but any production wants to come in from out of town. If they have any questions, we can facilitate permits. We can help
Okay.
them get the streets open or the streets shut down. We can tell
Okay.
them where to go. And sometimes it's just as easy as, hey, do you know a hotel in the area that would take pets? Or do you
Yeah.
know a restaurant in the area that would let us shoot inside just as
Okay.
is? We don't want to dress it. We
Interesting.
just want to go into an Italian restaurant. Who do
Yeah.
you know that's open to just like letting us come in? And there's lots of people like that. So it's something as
Yeah.
simple as that. Sometimes it's as exotic as finding a specific locale that's just woods,
Yeah.
but we want it close enough to a hotel or a city, and so that gets our brains going. So
Yeah.
we're helpful in that way as liaisons, I like to
That's
to
awesome.
call it.
Yeah.
And then when the movie comes out, we promote it. We put it
Yeah.
up on the website, and well, we promote the heck out of it and tell them where to go to the TV stations to get their stuff, and then we promote it on the red carpets, and
Awesome.
so that's part of the fun. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's interesting. I guess I want to pivot again towards so your column for performing arts entertainment, center stage. Um, I guess how is your approach for finding like emerging performers, emerging actors, and things like that?
Well,
Uh,
Center Stage actually started in a newspaper.
okay.
I've had lots of different jobs. I was a newspaper editor and writer,
Wow.
and I wanted to do arts and entertainment specifically.
Okay.
And then it morphed from that to giving me my own column, weekly call Center Stage in the Farmington Valley.
Okay.
It covered Farmington, Simsbury, Avon,
Hmm.
all those towns, Burlington, and I would just get local talent that was doing something interesting, whether they were actors who had a small part in a movie, maybe they were
Okay.
directors or writers or what have you. And that was fairly easy to get during that tenure. And then after that came to an end, I thought, why not call my podcast Center Stage? And I
Yeah.
went through Patreon. And so I did it out of my basement.
Oh
And
wow.
it only lasted a couple of years because I need engineers to help me set up I want to have like multi-camera setups, and my son
Yeah.
helped me a little bit for the first few, but then he wasn't around all the time, so it got kind of difficult. I just want to host it and produce it and get the guests. I want some
Yeah.
engineer to take care of the rest of it. And I know it's easy for some people, but for me, it's like I
Yeah.
can't be in both places, behind the
Yeah.
scenes and in front of it. But
Definitely.
I had local filmmakers coming in, and
Okay.
my friends from the past that had done some interesting things, and it was a lot of fun, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm looking to get a podcast going again, maybe calling it Center Stage again, or maybe just calling it something totally new.
Yeah.
Once
Definitely.
I get a little bit of a budget, we're working on that now for the new year.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. That's
But I loved
awesome.
it. I mean, I got to interview one of the guys from Mad Men, the TV series. His name's Michael Gladys. He's Kyone Wolf works with NPR. I don't know if you know the name, but she's very famous here. But her brother used to work on Mad Men, and I got
Wow.
an interview with him because we both went to Farmington High School.
Oh, wow.
And so we were talking about the same hangouts that we would hang out after and party
Yeah,
at, and it was just
that's
so
cool.
surreal to talk
Yeah.
with him. And then I had a few people on my sitcom. Bernadette Stanis was from Good Times, and I had a few people that live in Connecticut that were
Awesome.
in it as cameos too. And it's like this person that you've not idolized, but you watched her on TV when you were a little kid, and now she's reading your script one day
That's
and
awesome.
just repeating the lines that you wrote just a few months earlier. So it's mind-boggling what the things that can happen in a matter of a short time,
Yeah,
just by
definitely.
luck or knowing
Yeah,
the right
and I think
people.
yeah, and I think also too, like your hard work. I mean, you spent the time getting the education and building yourself up, and like, um, you were working on different aspects of performing arts, and then like even podcasting is kind of the form of journalism, interviewing people and stuff. So you're building up that whole repertoire of experience. And that's kind of the one thing I guess on the podcast that inspired me to start trying to create content and podcasts. The Book of Five Rings. I don't know if you're familiar with.
No, I'm
So
not.
it was a Japanese samurai from feudal era Japan, and he was like phenomenal. He never lost like a match, and he at the end of his life he decided to write this book. He became a Buddhist philosopher, and he was like, you know what, I've learned all these lessons through my martial arts career and life in general. And he talks about the thing about never settling, and constantly learning different skills and different going to different places and stuff and experiences, so that when you tie it all together you end up becoming more well-rounded. And like
Mhm.
as you're explaining all your experiences, I was thinking, wow, like that's kind of like the living, I guess, inclination or iteration of that. You put in the work. We were talking about too about like how you come in early, you go extra, you have the passion for it, and you're just really grinding for it. And then eventually someone that you looked up to was reading your script and acting in one of your shows. It's phenomenal.
Well, it's like you said, it's a hard work first, the passion. Then
Hmm.
it's a bit of luck. I wrote a book, my memoir, about 3 years ago called Life at 24 Frames Per Second. And it talks about my life living on the fringe of show business.
Yeah.
And I self-published it. It wasn't a publisher or anything like that, but
Yeah.
it was fun. It was a fun, cathartic writing. And sometimes it was just be dumb luck. Like I used to work at the Oakdale Musical Theater in Wallingford when it was a
Hmm.
smaller theater. And I got to meet everyone from Jay Leno to the Monkees to
Wow.
everybody. And
Wow.
eventually I got to write for Jay Leno
Oh, wow.
because I was his stage manager, and then I'd meet him a couple of times after that. And back in the early '90s, you were allowed to be a freelance writer. They wouldn't necessarily use your work, but you could send in jokes, and I'd
Yeah.
send in jokes, just as an
Cool.
example. And it took me months and months, and then I got really PO'd a little bit one day. So I didn't even have money for a fax machine because they were so expensive in those days. So I'd go to the West Hartford Library and fax in the jokes.
Yeah.
Well, I get home. I said, "How about helping a guy out who helped you on the stage at Oakdale Musical Theater?" I was trying to see if he knew me. So I get home and there's a message on my machine saying, "I got your stuff. Don't worry about it.
Oh, wow.
What we buy." And then he bought a couple of jokes, a couple of months later. So that was kind
That's
of nice.
phenomenal.
I'm sure it was just to make me feel good. I'm sure he didn't even
Yeah.
like them, but it was
Yeah.
nice to get a check.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, definitely.
I always had the gumption of trying things. There was always it
Yeah.
always seemed like there were more opportunities in the '80s and '90s to just go after what you wanted, and there was a chance you could get it. I don't see as many opportunities now like
Yeah.
that because again, the technology kind of is a barrier. It can be good, but it can also be a barrier,
Yeah, definitely.
um, especially when you're used to one on one and looking someone in the eye
Yeah.
and picking up the phone.
Yeah.
Old school.
Yeah,
you know.
definitely. That
I don't
goes a
like to
long
text.
way. I
I don't
mean,
like to text. I don't like to email. Only
yeah.
as a last resort. If I
Yeah.
have to do it, I'll do it. But you don't get a feel for the person when you're not talking to them.
Yeah,
You just
definitely.
don't. Um,
Definitely.
I
Like,
hope I
yeah, it
answered
goes a
some of
long
your
way.
questions.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely you did. I mean, that's awesome. And like I don't know. You hit on the nail, kind of. I guess like I guess a lot of the other episodes I talked about is like another premise is like failing. It's okay to fail. The only time you ever really fail is if you just completely give up or
Oh
you're
yeah.
dead.
Oh,
Yeah,
agreed. And I failed at a lot of things. As I
yeah,
mentioned in my book, there's a lot of things I tried that didn't work.
yeah.
But you learn from your failures.
Exactly.
I truly believe that.
Yeah. And I feel like, I mean, I feel like a lot of times social media especially doesn't really, and even I guess maybe movies and film, it's like you said, the romanticization, but like they don't showcase how many actors fail or like took years and years and years to get that one role
Right.
or that one opportunity to be able to do what they love doing, kind of thing. So I feel like a lot of times we talk about all these successes, but never about the failures and that it's okay to fail. Because for me, at least, like growing up, I was always told, don't fail, don't get bad grades, don't do anything, bad. But as an adult, whenever I fail or make a mistake, I'm like, okay, so that didn't work, or I almost, maybe I almost lost an arm or whatever, whatever. Hopefully, I'm not doing anything crazy like that.
Yeah,
But,
right.
I made a mistake, failed, it flopped. Okay, let's move on. Let's pivot and see what we need to do to keep, you know, building up.
I would also suggest to any actor, anyone interested in acting, is to read memoirs of
Yeah.
famous
Okay.
actors. You got Patrick Stewart just came out with Make It So. Henry Winkler just came out with, I don't know what the book is called. I have to read it. The Fonz
Yeah.
and Michael Caine. They all have similar stories about how when they were first starting out, people thought they were horrible, told them not to go into
Yeah.
acting because they would never make it. But it was that criticism that got them stronger. It made
Yeah.
them stronger to want it more.
Yeah.
We've all had that critique. Oh, you suck, or you're no
Yeah.
good at this. You should go into something else, or who do you think,
Yeah.
or who do you think you are? A lot of people
Yeah.
are jealous of you, not because you're a better actor or writer or anything like that, but because you're pursuing something that you want to do. They're not doing it, so they're
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and everything else. But I enjoy it so much, and I pursue it, and I keep going. I'm like once I'm a bulldog. I just keep on going, and I'm
Yeah.
sure I'm sure you're the same way in the
Yeah.
military. You're like there's something you're either driven to do whatever it is, or you're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and I feel like when you get like hit in the face with a failure or something doesn't work out, it's kind of like you said, someone tells you you suck.
Yeah.
For me, at least, especially, it motivates me. It's like, okay, now I'm gonna like figure it out and do better.
Right.
And it's not even to prove them wrong. It's just because like it's like, okay, I may suck now, but give me like even 5 years, give me 5 months, give me a little time, and I'm gonna come back and you know it's gonna
Right.
ramp up. We're going up.
Right.
So
But also, if
that's
if you're
awesome.
that thin-skinned that you can't take the criticism, you really
Yeah,
shouldn't be there. You
yeah,
know,
exactly.
people are always going to say they hate you, and especially if you get famous. I mean,
Yeah,
with the especially with the social sites and all that,
yeah.
they're going to lay into you, and you better be you better
It's
be
some
ready
of
to
the
take
stuff
it.
is brutal to
Oh
actors
yeah,
and anybody who's online who has any kind of audience or any doing anything creative. It's like, wow, like how do you have that much time and energy to put into somebody negatively like that? That's like brutal. Like,
well they're keyboard jockeys, as you know.
yeah,
They have
yeah,
nothing else going,
hmm,
and it's not they don't have the right to critique you. They do have the right to critique you, but they don't have the right to like bully you. There's a
yeah,
difference.
exactly.
And there's people that just are out there just to try to
Hmm,
destroy you because you dare to have a desire, a
yeah,
passion to do something.
yeah, yeah. Essentially,
Yeah.
yeah, 100%.
Just don't give up. Whatever you're doing, don't give up.
Yeah,
Just keep going. If you really want to do it, then pursue it. You
for
know.
sure, for sure.
That's
That's awesome.
my advice.
Yeah, appreciate that's excellent advice because I don't know how many people, and myself included, you get in those days of dumps where you're like, oh, why am I doing this? And that's phenomenal. So I have another question for you. So I know we talked about The Big Shot,
Yeah.
that sitcom a little bit, but then Operation Guardian Angels. I guess what inspired these stories? Because I know I read a little bit of the synopsis. It was a World War II sci-fi film, and I guess how did you go about with the creative process bringing it to life?
I've always loved science fiction to death ever since I was a little kid. And World War II movies for some reason
Yeah,
because I'm in my 50s, so I remember like the 60s and 70s when they'd have like The Great Escape or The Dirty Dozen or A Bridge Too Far in the early 70s. Those are some of my favorite movies, Kelly's
yeah,
Heroes. And it was a time where it wasn't too far removed from World War II, and we were heroes. And it was probably one of the last times that everyone thought we were great. You know what I mean? Not to say that they don't think we're great now,
Yeah.
but in that time, we were defeating an enemy that was just incredible,
Yeah.
and the world was involved, and it was just those kind of things. Band of Brothers. I mean,
Yeah.
all the anything that comes up. My buddy Craig, he's better at this than I am. He knows all about if we're watching a movie, he knows if it's accurate, the uniforms they're wearing
Yeah.
from the enemies and if it's the wrong gun or the wrong tank or whatever, he'll walk out of the movie. He's like,
Yeah.
they didn't do their homework. So I respect him a lot for that. So he
Yeah.
got me involved in a lot of, oh, they wouldn't have worn that kind of a uniform, or that's the wrong gun. They didn't come out with that till 1948. It's like, well, who's gonna know that? Who's gonna know a tank is from 1943 or 1946? He would.
Yeah.
So that's how I got into like that kind of genre, the World War II movies.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, I like X Files. I
Hmm.
loved the X Files when that was coming out. I was like, what if the X Files met Band of Brothers? And the way it came about was there are many mysteries in World War II that were
Hmm.
never solved.
Yeah.
They talk about Foo Fighters, the little balls that would come up to the planes and they didn't know what they were.
Yeah.
And everyone saw them, not just us, but the Russians and the Germans and the Japanese had similar stories, UFOs and Roswell and all this stuff, and
Yeah.
planes that would disappear and then reappear.
Yeah.
There was one where a battleship came ashore with nobody on board and they
Yeah.
were never found. What
Yeah.
happened to them? There was like
Yeah.
80 people on the ship.
Definitely.
So you hear all these like, Philadelphia experiments and,
Hmm.
things that happened in Germany in 1936, a downed UFO. Did they get reverse engineering?
Yeah.
Hitler was into the occult. We know this for a fact.
Yeah.
There was a special division called Annenhaus that his people would go and worship to these things to try to get more power and things like that.
Yeah.
Ridiculous things,
Yeah.
but just the idea that they would do this in real life, maybe we can take that one step further. So the idea for the Operation Guardian Angels were these guys that were commandos that were former priests, rabbis,
Wow.
people who had specialties in the occult to go behind enemy lines to see if Hitler was getting help from the devil, or
Oh,
from
wow.
some powerful super
Like entity type thing.
entity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, we know that there was, and the Japanese had the equivalent of a Dr. Mengele called Unit 731. Not a lot of people
Mhm.
don't know about that, but they would
Yeah.
they would experiment on American GIs that they'd captured, and they would put animal
Wow.
pieces on them instead of, and all sorts of weird, brutal stuff that
Yeah.
when you read the stuff, it's like, that sounds science fiction. It's
Yeah.
like, well, what if this stuff, what if we went, with the commandos who, and it's bookended in, it starts out with it's in present day with the last survivor of this unit. And he's like 104, we don't really
Yeah.
know what his age is, but he's like, he's giving his story to a reporter. And then it
Mhm.
goes back into the past in 1943 as he's telling his story
Yeah.
from 1943 to the end of the war and all their missions that they go on, and all the interesting things. And I thought that would be a terrific way
Yeah.
to do it. And again, it could be shot in Connecticut. It could be shot
Yeah.
relatively inexpensively.
Yeah.
I think once any of these, if we did a weekly series like my sitcom, could be done for about 150 to $200,000 an
Oh, yeah.
episode. Sounds like a lot of money, but the average sitcom is $3 and $4 million per episode.
Wow.
So to do it for like 300,000, let's say, even,
Yeah.
that's nothing. So if we were to do like an hour long drama like this one I just told you about, Operation Guardian
Yeah.
Angels, we could probably do that without a big, without a huge cast of known people, maybe some cameos. But we
Yeah.
could probably do that for under $400,000 an episode if shot in Connecticut.
Wow.
You
Yeah.
know, and so that I have I have like 8 stories ready to go with the sitcom. I have at least 10 story ideas for the Operation Guardian Angels.
Yeah.
So, and then I have an idea for another sitcom after that. So who knows? And
Yeah.
then other movies, and
Yeah.
knowing what we know and with the skills and with the people we had, we did the sitcom
Mhm.
pilot for $15,000. We wanted 50,000,
Yeah.
but we just didn't get it. And
Yeah.
so, although it looks like a $15,000, it's a conceptual pilot. We'd have to redo the pilot again.
Yeah.
I still,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
so
That's really interesting. I'm a big sci-fi nerd. That's kind of where the whole podcast and brand is kind of around, is like science fiction nerds, Marvel, Star Wars, like
Sure.
even the independent stuff. I love like the 1930s, 1940s pulp fiction, and then I'm big into like, and not really conspiracy theories, but like cryptids and aliens and things
Sure.
like that. So it's really interesting. You mentioned that like even World War II, and even recently, um, if you look at like, there's a few stories, like I think it's called the Kandahar Giant from Iraq and Afghanistan,
Hmm.
where I guess there's a few different versions, but like a platoon of special forces soldiers go missing. So they send in another platoon to investigate, and a giant with like 6 fingers, red hair, almost very biblical as well.
Hmm.
And I don't know if this is even a true story. Very interesting, but they fought him and killed him. And I guess Black Hawk took it to one base, and then a C-130 came in and picked it up. And just stories like that, alien stories and things like that. As an aviator as well, I find that interesting. And some of that stuff, like there's a lot of naval pilots who are coming out now who are talking about like unidentified flying objects, and little spheres or whatever it is that they're seeing nowadays. And there's video footage, so it's
Well,
I would totally watch it.
yeah, there's something to that. I mean, I truly believe that we've been visited. I think we are
Oh
being
yeah.
visited. I'm not trying to put tinfoil on my head, but from all the things that I've seen,
Hmm.
the hieroglyphics on when I went to the Mayan ruins at Chichen Itza, there were like clearly space vehicles on their
Yeah.
hieroglyphics. It's like, well, how did they get here? I mean, they all have this similar stories in every different
Yeah.
country, of discs in the sky. So it can't be.
Yeah.
It's got to be something to it, and
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if there weren't. But yeah, so the UFOs and in fact, matter of fact, the Battle of LA in 1942, they talk about how they were firing at a disc for like 3 hours and they never hit it. What
Yeah.
was it? We don't know.
Exactly.
The Germans had these where they reverse engineering a spaceship because they had something called Die Glocke, which was like a bell, and they thought it was anti gravity
Huh.
that they were working on, and they were working on
Yeah.
so many different things. Like you almost wonder, was there something else here
Yeah.
helping them along? You know.
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely. Yeah. I think that's interesting. So I guess, like you mentioned, I guess pitching to investors and things like that to get hopefully a budget, and then working from that. Is that typically how the process is? Is like you'll have the creative process, refine it, kind of get a pilot going or something, and then you start pitching it and trying to build off that, or is
I
there
wish I
like
knew
an
because I would have
independent?
sold it by now.
Yeah.
I wish I had an answer. The original idea was when I had the idea for the sitcom was not to shoot it, was just to sell it to pitch it to Netflix. And I had an entertainment attorney friend of mine that was going to help try to pitch the idea. Then another one of my friends said, "Hey, why don't we just make the actual pilot as best we can with the money we have, and then try to
Okay.
shop that?"
Yeah.
Well, we pitched it. We finished it, and one of my buddies actually got it on Amazon. So you can go on Amazon and actually rent it.
Oh,
So I
that's
thought that
cool.
would get the eyeballs on it at least,
Yeah.
and which was the next thing to do, which we did. But we haven't heard back anything, and you can't let it stop you just because the first thing you
Yeah.
did didn't work.
Yeah.
I
Definitely.
haven't stopped pushing it or pitching it. It's just that it may not work
Yeah.
under current conditions. But if I were to get like a win lotto tomorrow, I would personally finance it because I believe
Yeah.
in it myself. You
Yeah.
know, and the thing that frustrates me the most is there are so many people with money in Connecticut that claim they love the arts, they want to see a TV show here, and yet when it comes to get the purse strings open, they don't want to open the purse strings. And it wouldn't take very much money. I mean, all they'd have to do to even get 10 episodes done, you get 20 guys and give you $50,000 and you're all
Yes.
set.
Yeah.
That have the money, they can use it as a tax write off, or even if
Yeah.
they can't use it as a tax write off, it's
Yeah.
nothing to them. Some people, it's nothing to them to write a check for $50,000.
It's crazy.
Or you get 1,000 people to write a couple $1,000. If it's not
Yeah.
50,000, there's money out there, and I'm telling you, once a TV series, whether it's mine or somebody else's, gets off, then you have the thing about films, as I've always said, is the film comes in for 2 or 3 months and then it's over. They leave.
Yeah.
With a TV show, you got regular people working every single week on a
Yeah.
new project that's part of the show. That's why I'm
Yeah.
pushing a series, whether it's
Yeah.
a drama or a sitcom.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping to do.
Well, to all the viewers listening, check out The Big Shot, and hopefully we can get some traction, get some interest in it, because I definitely would love to see a lot of projects in Connecticut. It'd be a cool thing to, be able to be like, oh, I know that place, and I've driven past that place, or I've gone there, gone to that restaurant, whatever.
And I have
Um,
no problem. I personally
yeah,
contact the people I want, like Nicky Cage or Will Wheaton or any of these
yeah,
people. Brendan Fraser, he turned us
yeah,
down, but at least his people looked at it and he just said
yeah,
it wasn't his cup of tea. But I'm not afraid of contacting the celebrities, and that's
yeah,
easy for me to do, But
yeah,
it's the catch 22, the chicken and the egg. You contact their agent, and then, well, where's the money? They want to know the money's there.
yeah,
And what I'm saying is, listen, I want to know if Nick Cage is interested in it first. Then I'll raise the money once you give me his letter of intent, and
yeah,
I'll go out and say, "Hey, Nick Cage is interested in working on this
yeah.
film or this TV show."
Yeah, because
Wouldn't
you're
that be
almost in the
great?
cycle now. Because now they're saying, "Oh, well, we need interest in it
Right.
from the investor side," but then the actor talent side is like, it's kind of like they want,
Well, right. What we have going for us is
yeah,
a lot of them ask you if you have distribution. We have distribution through
yeah,
Amazon through a friend of mine. He says, if you
okay,
get this on, I'll put it on Amazon. So
interesting,
getting it seen on the
yeah,
streaming service is not the problem. I've got the
yeah,
episodes; they're all done. The scripts are all finished. I've got the all the talent in place, or the actors behind the scene, the crew. But it's just about getting the money now.
yeah,
And so hopefully that will come. But I'm not giving up,
awesome,
and I have several ideas, and I don't mind working on somebody else's projects to get it done
hmm,
first. Being a producer on several other films comes sometimes
yeah,
that gets you up the ladder too once you've done a
yeah,
few other things. So that's what I do too. I produced some low budget films, and
definitely,
looking to do that again.
yeah,
So, and I wish you the best of luck, Josh, too. Is it Josh or Joshua?
Josh,
Josh, all right. Well,
yes,
I wish you the best in the and the only advice I would give to you personally, or to any
hmm,
actor, is just keep volunteering. There's also
definitely,
all your theater groups. Manchester community,
yeah,
they have their own community theaters, and Farmington Valley has one.
definitely,
Almost every town has one, and you can get involved that way. And if you want to know what's going on as far as people that might need extras in a film, you just have to go to our site, our Facebook site,
okay,
Hartford Film and Media Commission.
okay,
If they go to
awesome,
that on Facebook, they can I can invite them in, and then they can see what's coming up.
awesome, interesting,
If that helps.
for sure. I'll have to check that out myself.
Yeah,
Awesome. So I'd like to. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
that's all right.
Uh, so I appreciate you coming on. I hopefully could have you on again. And
Oh yeah, yeah.
would love to have you on again. And this should be hopefully aired within once the new year starts. I'm going to be start rolling out episodes once a week, and hopefully I'll let you know when it comes out. I could send you to the edited version
Yeah,
once
make it
I.
short because I don't want to be too boring. Make it shorter.
No, I think you have a very interesting perspective, and the fact that you've put in the work and have a lot of insights towards the industry and then life's philosophies was really insightful. So it was an honor to have you on and appreciate
Oh,
having
thank
you on the
you. And
podcast.
if I can help with any guests that you might need that I have friends of, I'll make some suggestions to you of other people that are writers or filmmakers that you might want as your guests in the future.
Most definitely. Most definitely. I'd appreciate it. Yeah. I'm looking for hopefully I have as many guests on and different perspectives and, experiences.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thanks so
Well,
much,
happy New
Steve. And
Year to
thank
you,
you.
Josh.
Happy New Year to you too, Steve.
And
Awesome.
we'll
Well, thank everyone for listening. I appreciate it. If you're interested, please do give a follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to, as well as check out The Big Shot. Check out, Steve Emirzian and his projects and stuff like that. Hopefully we can get this moving. Hopefully some sort of online traction. Let's put a petition and get it going. All right. Thanks everyone for listening. Thank you for joining, Steve. Awesome. Thank you. You too.
Thank you for listening. Consider absolutely smashing the subscribe button for more content like this.